Okay, hi everyone. My name is David Cochran, and this is a presentation by the Cosmobiology Institute. And this is our very first meeting about research. So the Cosmobiology Institute is a nonprofit organization. Most of the services that we're developing will be free. We're dedicated to the greater good, as all nonprofits are. And this is going to be a monthly meeting on the fourth Tuesday, at least it's Tuesday here in the United States, Wednesday in parts of Asia and so on, Tuesday evening here on the East Coast of the USA. It's going to be, this is the first meeting. It's going to be a monthly meeting. So you're welcome to attend. And because this is our first meeting, I'm going to lay out some fundamental principles. The idea of this meeting, or these meetings, because it's going to be a monthly meeting, is to help you with research. If you're interested in research, you're interested in conducting research, or maybe you don't want to conduct research. You just want to know like how people do research in astrology. This is for you. So we're here to help work together on research. So I'm going to do about, I don't know how long it's going to take. If it takes more than an hour, I will stop after 1 hour, because I want at least a half hour to hear your thoughts and questions. But for this first meeting, I'm going to lay out some basic ideas so we're all on the same page. Like, why are we here? What are we doing? What's going on? In the future, there won't be a presentation like this. We'll just get together and work on your questions and thoughts on research. Okay, but we thought for this first meeting, lay out some fundamental principles. Everybody good? Everybody hears me? Everything cool? You see my screen? Okay, I'm seeing some.
I have a question, David.
Yeah.
Santino, are these recorded to watch later? I know you're recording them, but going to
Oh,
be
yes.
something we can watch
Yes.
later.
Yeah, thanks for asking. These will be saved. The Cosmobiology Institute has a YouTube page. They call it a channel. And so you can go to youtube.com and search for Cosmobiology Institute. You'll find it. And within a few days, it will be uploaded. So these will
Okay.
be available to the public, even if you're not registered. It'll be available to everyone. To attend, you needed to register to get the link, because we want to have a list of the people who are involved in attending and things like that. Okay.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
once you've registered, by the way, we decided that you will automatically get a reminder each month about the meeting. It's going to be the same time, same address. So you have that link. That link will work in the future. So fourth Tuesday, at least Tuesday in the United States, same time, same address. You can put that in your calendar and just come. But we will send a reminder, and then you can opt out if you don't want the reminders in the future. Okay, let's go for it. Let me do my little presentation here to lay out some fundamental principles. It's just so we're all on the same page. We know what this is about and where we're going. So I call this some fundamental principles. Okay. First of all, why are we here? Why are we doing this? And what do we mean by research? So I have two quotes from the Cosmobiology Institute website, which is cosmobiology.org, and I'm going to read them because this really makes it clear what we're doing here. The Cosmobiology Institute operates with the same technical and academic sophistication as excellent universities and research institutes. Whoa, there's a big statement. So this is for really doing very high quality research. If you don't know anything about research, but you're interested, don't let that scare you. Most of the principles are simple, and we will help everyone, and we all work together to help each other. But our goal with the Cosmobiology Institute is high level, academic level, sophisticated research. That's what we want to do. The focus is on discovery and innovation that meets the standards of the world's finest educational research institutions. Cutting edge developments in research methods, data science, analytics, mathematical models, and physics are utilized to make discoveries and build applications. So anything we can get our hands on that's going to help us develop theory, help us make observations, really hardcore advancements to see if astrology actually, quote, works. rigorous testing and evaluation combined with the highest integrity, sincerity, and honesty in reporting findings places the Cosmobiology Institute at the forefront of groundbreaking technological advancements that can deliver practical applications and useful benefits in a wide range of disciplines. So Cosmobiology Institute is about doing the research, make the findings, and then people can take those findings, make products out of them, do whatever you want with it. Our goal at the Institute is to make a breakthrough, make breakthroughs to find out if there's actually a relationship between things going on in the sky and human behavior. Is it measurable? Can it be detected? The Cosmology, and now this is a very important statement. One of these statements is from the homepage, the other is the mission page at the website. But this is also important. The Cosmobiology Institute is dedicated to the application of scientific methods to determine the nature of things, regardless of whether those discoveries may be comfortable or uncomfortable for some people to accept, right? We're just being like brave. Like, what's the deal if astrology it's not measurable and it's all divination? Fine, whatever it is, let's find out. Okay. Now, a little bit about me. I don't like to talk about myself a lot, but each of us has something to contribute. If you're a therapist, if you're whatever you do, you bring certain information and perspectives that's useful. You don't have to have training in research methods to help with research. There's all kinds of things needed. But just to tell you a little bit about myself related to research, I have a master's degree in research and evaluation methodology from the University of Florida. I did that as an adult, got the degree in 2017, went back to school. I've been a speaker at academic research conferences, like a conference called the TQR conference. I gave a lecture on the surprising power of extreme case sampling. So I'm actually really into research methods, go to academic conference. I was the co-author of an academic paper on estimating latent variable interactions in structural equation models. Okay, that probably sounded like gibberish to you, but anyway, I'm really into research methods and I've conducted many research studies in astrology and I've worked with other researchers, but I'm just the monitor here. You guys may have expertise I don't have. It's all about working together. Okay, now, first thing, why do we do research? You know that song, let's begin at the beginning. Why the heck are we doing this, right? It might seem obvious, but people have sometimes said to me, oh, you do research, you're trying to prove astrology. No, that's not why we do it. That's not why the Cosmobiology Institute does research, not to prove astrology. Why do we do it? To improve our understanding, right? That's the goal, to improve our understanding. Another way to state this, improve our confidence in something. So the goal of research is to improve our confidence in understanding something. You got it? This is like really big. You know, it might sound simple, but this is big. So with astrology research, what's the goal? Improve our understanding of the relationship of the position of celestial objects with behavior on Earth, especially relationships not confirmed in scientific journals. That's generally what it's about. Can we improve our understanding? That's the goal. And another thing is a lot of research makes only a very small improvement in understanding. It might be some very specific little detail, and it makes us a little more confident that maybe the moon in Gemini does this or does not do it, or planets in the 8th house do something using modern research methods. Gives us a little more confidence. Doesn't have to be convincing. If it makes some progress in giving us more confidence about what something means, that's a successful research, even if it's showing that something does not mean what everybody thinks it means. And modern research methods reveal how things work. They give us greater confidence. That's the assumption of Cosmobiology Institute, is that modern research methods work. They help us gain confidence in understanding how things work. So it can improve our understanding that a relationship between astrological variables in behavior exists or does not exist. And note that confidence is always between 0 and 100%. You never reach 0 or 100. You never know something absolutely in a observational science like psychology, medicine, or astrology. So you never prove anything. We don't use the word proof. It's like a 4-letter word. We don't use that. That's a bad word. All we do is because it's erroneous, all we do is we increase confidence or decrease confidence in an idea. Sometimes you cannot put a percentage on it, but an estimated level of confidence. Okay, are we clear? Is all this obvious? I just want to lay everything out so we're all on the same page getting into this. Now, okay, so we know what the goal of research is. Gain confidence. Does Sun trine Jupiter make you extroverted or not? We can answer those questions. We have 800 cases of people who took an extroversion introversion test. We can analyze this data and we can find out. In fact, we have found out. And according to modern research methods, that evidence is worth more than whatever 1,000 astrologers tell you. So we're using the principles of modern research methods that are used in universities in every field, whether it's biology, chemistry, psychology, whatever. We're using those principles. If you don't agree with those principles, then that's fine. You're free to think whatever you want. But this is what the Cosmobiology Institute is. It's for the assumption that modern research methods do inform us, and we use them to learn about astrology. So what kind of evidence do we have? Not just modern research methods, but how do we know if Taurus is stubborn, Gemini talks a lot, Cancer's domestic, Leo has a big ego, blah, blah, blah. How do we come up with this stuff? Well, one, it might be passed down to us, a tradition, right? A lot of times we believe, we get ideas passed down. That's not a modern research method, and it gives us like almost no confidence. It does give us a little bit of information, and we do look at traditions, but it doesn't give us great confidence. But it is a starting point. Personal observations. You just happen to notice something. Your sister has moon in Gemini and she talks a lot, and your brother has moon in Cancer and he's in the kitchen all the time and very emotionally sensitive. So you have observations. They might be extensive. You might be a full-time astrologer. We call that anecdotal evidence because it's just what you happen to run into. You haven't controlled the observations in any way. You'll see what the alternatives to just encountering things. So there's anecdotal evidence. That also does not give us great confidence, but it's a starting point. If you notice something, we could research it more formally. Number 3, observational studies. Observational studies are similar to personal observation, but they're controlled or they're done more carefully. They're similar to anecdotal evidence, but they're not as sloppy. They're organized. So observations are carefully documented and quantified. For example, suppose you're a practicing astrologer and you see clients and you say, this stuff works. The rising sign works. The ruler of the ascendant works. Well, what you could do to convert your anecdotal evidence of the consultations into a more modern style research that we feel gives more confidence is you could record the consultations, or if they're biographies, you have the biographies. You could count the number of times a word is used to describe someone. So if someone says, oh, I get angry, or I have anger issues, then you could count how many times the word angry, or you can pick a list of words, is used by a person to describe themselves. And then you can use that as a measurement of anger, rather than just you saying, oh, well, I counsel Joe and he's very angry. How do you know he's angry? Well, it's obvious. In other words, you have some clear criterion that's used. And maybe you find that out of biographies, you notice either the word anger or angry is never used, or it's used up to 12 times, and you get a score where 12 happen to be the maximum. So careful documentation and rules for conducting the research are clear. You explain what you did, and here's the key. Can a person who learns about your research replicate your study? Did you explain it clearly enough that if I want to, or somebody else attending this meeting wanted to do the same research with their clients, did you make it clear enough that they can do it? If you did, and everything is nicely measured, that is academic level research. You've gone from anecdotal evidence to a case study simply by being completely transparent and removing subjective evaluations that can distort your observations. Is that clear? We're all good? So it's all about getting away from anecdotal evidence and having some more formal way to see what's going on. Now, I'll mention a few other kinds of research. A very common kind of research is you want to know what is in the charts of chess players. So you get a list of professional chess players or high-level competitors. You look at what's there in their charts, and you compare them to people who are not chess players. Or example, forecasting. You might look at the transits or progressions or other forecasting methods when a person gets into an accident, on the day they got into an accident versus days they did not get into an accident. So that's one kind of research. The people who are chess players or the times of accidents is called the experimental group. And if you compare them to another group, they're called the control group. So you've heard this term control group, control group. What is it? It's a group that you're comparing the experimental group with. What's the experimental group? That's the people you're studying, the chess players. So it's nice to have language so we can just say, oh, the experimental group, oh, the control group. You got it? You get this language down? It's very, very simple. But like any field, we have language so we can just refer to things quickly and unambiguously. And the comparisons of the time people get into an accident to the control where they do not get into an accident does not need to be statistical. A lot of people think, oh, research is statistics. No, 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 1,000 times wrong. That's like saying music is, some pop singer, whatever, or style of music. Music is jazz. No, jazz is one style of music. There's many ways to do research, huge numbers of ways. They're all about some technique that's going to give you more confidence and understanding, even if it's a little bit. So you could have a visual presentation. You could have a graph that shows the graph goes up when the person's in an accident. That's giving me more confidence, like, oh my God, the graph went up. It's not about like proving with numbers. Numbers can be important, but they're not necessary for all research. It's anything that gives you, you might say, a more objective view into something and gives you more confidence. If I see graphs going up every time these 10 people were in an accident, it's inclining me to think, wow, it looks like there's something here. Let's do more research. That's way more impressive than some astrologer telling me that transiting Mars square natal Uranus causes accidents. We need some kind of data that we can look at and that's organized and in some way. Okay. Okay, there are many, many, many kinds of research designs. Things that research designs do, just as examples, they do many things, but just to give you an idea, they avoid convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is what we call just using data that you run into. You happen to meet these people or read about them. You haven't gathered the data in any systematic way. We try to avoid convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is very insidious. And as astrologers, you could see why it could be insidious. All these people that have planets in Pisces and are psychics might be because you attracted them to you. It might be telling you about some kind of psychic mechanism to which you're attracting them. And we try to remove that by having a more objective sampling method. Okay, other things with research, you try to have other researchers review and critique the research. There's no golden pathway to making discoveries. It's easy to make mistakes, overlook things. If you get 4 or 5 people together, like in a Zoom meeting or in person, and they all understand some basics about research methods and they understand the topic you're researching, it's amazing how someone will point out things that the researcher missed. It's just a lot of creative thinking and open-mindedness to think about where you could have made a mistake, what will improve it. A lot of creative thinking is involved. There isn't like a simple set of steps. There's all these guidelines and issues. You got the idea? It's much less linear than some people think it is. Okay, now if you want to learn about research designs, I recommend going to the Cosmobiology Institute website, cosmobiology.org, and go to the research tab. Oh, I don't think I brought this up. Hold on a second, let me see. Yeah, here's the website, cosmobiology.org, and if you click on this research menu item, there are 2 links, one to a short version, the condensed version, and one to the complete version of the research guidelines. The complete version is like 30 or 40 pages long or something, and it goes into great detail on different research designs. And, I would recommend that if you want to get deep into understanding research designs as related to astrology, and you can start with the condensed version, and then go on to the complete version if you absorb all that information. But what I'm setting out here are the basic concepts of what Cosmobiology Institute is all about, why we're here. We're here to do academic level research, to gain greater confidence in how astrology works using modern research methods. And I've given some broad awareness about what modern research methods are all about. Let's go over some terminology so that we can use it in the future. I already told you what the experimental group is. So from here on out, feel free to use the word experimental group. It just means if you're studying a group of people, it's the people you're studying. Got it? So if you're studying chess players or baseball players or whatever. Control group is a group that you're comparing them to. Those would be people who are not chess players or are not baseball players. Control group, not at the end of this, I say not all research has a control group. You don't have to have a control group, but if you do, that's what it's called. Virtually all research does have some kind of experimental group, has some group of people or something you're studying. And there are rules for what makes a control group. You try to make the control group similar to the experimental group. So for chess players, you might want a control group of people with similar levels of education. You might want the similar percent of males versus females. You might want them to be of a similar age, because if the control group is different from the experimental group, the difference might be because of the difference in the groups. This is scary. This is what makes research a headache. This is why it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult. Because the difference between the experimental group and the control group just might be the control group people were more highly educated or less highly educated. So you don't know if what you're comparing is chess or some other trait that these people have that's different from the control group. Now, you might say, well, my God, there's no way to make a perfect control group. Yes, there's no way. Therefore, how do you know what you found? We don't know. I just told you it's about confidence. You don't know anything. You just try to make a good control group. You do the best you can. And if it's pretty good, and you get good results, then we say, ah, there's a slight getting a little confidence that this might work, and then you replicate the study again. But no research is perfect, and no control group, if you're using control group, is perfect. You got the idea? This is a very practical and pragmatic thing. You're just trying to make progress. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of honesty, just to try to use these methods to make a little progress. Some other terms you should know: sample. Sample is actually another word for experimental group. We use the word sample to distinguish the experimental group from the population. Let me jump down to population. Population is all of the peoples that meet the definition. So if you say you're researching chess players, are you going to research every professional chess player in the world? No. Suppose you're going to research accidents. Are you going to research every accident in the world? Say it's car accidents. No, you can't. So the ones you study are called the sample. And the sample represents a population. So if you say that chess players have this in their chart, whatever it is, I'll say something simple like Sun is in Aquarius or something, or Mercury's in Aquarius. If that's what you say, how did you conclude that? By looking at the sample. The sample you've defined as chess players, and then the question is, how well does the sample represent the population? It might be contemporary chess players when you think about it more carefully. So you're always making a statement about a population, and very often you're taking a sample of the population. Sometimes you can study the entire population, but usually it's a sample. All of these things are very important for making a good research design. Does it make sense? It's like a lot of stuff in research makes like, duh, yeah, that makes sense, but if you don't think of it, you overlook it. So a lot of what research is about is, what are you saying? What exactly are you saying? Chess players. Well, how do you know chess players? Well, I got this data. Well, that data is all people who are living chess players. Maybe chess players in the 1900s were different, or maybe they're all in the United States. Maybe there's different tradition in Europe or Africa or somewhere else. So we're just questioning, understanding what it is we're talking about. And other variables you should know about are the term predictor variable. It's also called an independent variable. So you'll hear this terminology all the time. And if you don't know what predictor variable means, you can't follow the discussion. Predictor variable means a variable that precedes other variables in time, or in some ways is more fundamental. In astrology, the astronomical phenomena, such as the zodiac sign placement or the angular distance between planets, is called the independent variable or predictor variable. And you may not like that word if you feel that astrology works by synchronicity, but let's jump down to the bottom of this slide. The fact you're calling it a predictor variable does not mean there's a direct cause. The word cause is a complex philosophical term, and there's many definitions of cause. So don't be scared by calling the astrology variables predictor variables. It does not mean that those variables cause the person to be a chess player. It's just that the movement of the planets is not affected by human behavior. It's a given fact out there, and we tend to call it the independent variable. And then the behavior, like playing chess or getting in an accident, is sometimes called the outcome variable or dependent variable. But they're just terms, and they do not imply that it's directly dependent in a causal way. So don't let the terms get you upset. We just use them because it helps to have words for things. Because when you go into your statistics software to run something, it's often going to ask, what's the independent variable? What's the outcome variable? And so you need to know this terminology. Are we good? Okay, I'm going to carry on a little bit more and then type in the chat any questions or thoughts you have. And then after I'm done with this little monologue, we'll look at what you've written in the chat. Additional terminology: sampling method. This is the method you used to select the chess players out of the whole population of all chess players. How did you do it? It's important. Maybe in astrology, we use this thing called the online astro data bank. And so that tells us how, if that's what you're using, and then we can think about how that sample was created and what biases are created by it. Bias means something that distorts your results from what you think they mean. Okay, the term extraneous variable, you'll hear this term a lot. I'm just giving you some terminology. It's a variable not included in the study that is associated with the outcome variable. You know what the outcome variable is. That's like the behavior or whatever you're studying. The extraneous variable is a predictor variable that is not included in the research. For example, suppose that most of the 100 chess players in your sample were born in the 1950s. And suppose your control group tends to be younger. They're born in the 80s and 90s. Well, the aspects between some of the planets are different at different times. And you may see a difference between the chess players and the control group that has nothing to do with chess. It has to do with the fact they're older. And so the age of the people is an extraneous variable. It's a variable outside of what we considered, and it's actually we call it the cause. Don't take that word too literally, but it's actually the cause of what's going on. You all following me? Research is not easy. It's not easy. And one of the things the cynics of astrology do is they'll find some weakness in a study, and then they'll say, see, it really didn't work, which is really stupid. It's idiotic because there's limitations of all research. If you did that, there'd be no field of psychology at all. There's always some weaknesses. Research is not perfect. And that's why people keep building on previous research. Here's a funny one, but not a funny one, but a brain teaser, okay? Suppose I'm going to ask you if you can think of what the extraneous variable is. You have to happen to know about some things, but about births in different countries. But suppose that 20 of the 100 chess players were born in Brazil, Egypt, Turkey, Venezuela, and the Dominican Republic. They just happen to be born in those countries. So these countries are overrepresented. Your control group is not going to have 1 out of 5 people born in these particular countries. Maybe only 1 or 2, very few. So there's always some random fluctuation between a control group and experimental group. Our worry is that that random fluctuation might be the cause of what we're seeing. Now, let's say we look at these chess players and they tend to have Sun, Mercury, and Venus near the top of the chart wheel. In other words, in the last 6 houses, the 7th to 12th houses. So we say, oh my God, chess players are probably high achievers. Sun, Mercury, and Venus are above the horizon, up near the 10th, 9th, and 10th houses, you know. However, there is an extraneous variable. You'll probably never guess what it is. And I'm doing this because this is how nasty research is. There could be things going on that you'll never think of. So here's my question. Why would the chess players who are born more often in particular countries, Brazil, Egypt, Turkey, Venezuela, and Dominican Republic, why might they have the sun in the last 6 houses compared to the control group that's not born in those countries? And it has nothing to do with chess. When you hear this, it's like, oh my God, this is the weird, crazy, nasty stuff as researchers deal with. Anybody have an idea? I would have never thought of it.
I would guess that the ecliptic goes below. I don't know, maybe I'm completely off in where they're hitting the ecliptic.
Right. That's a good guess. It could have something to do with
Or because they're all from one country. That's my other guess. Or not from other countries.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it could be something that all these countries are closer to the equator. And that's not the reason, but that's a good guess.
Mm-hmm.
You ready for this? You'll never, when you think of it,
sure.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Devin, how are you doing? Timon.
Hey, Timon, oh boy, I haven't seen you in
Oh,
decades.
fine. I
How
haven't
you
seen
doing,
you for
man?
ages.
Yeah,
From some of my experience is that with location astrology, every place I go, I do a chart for that moment in time. You get a different
yeah.
answer. So that could be one of the factors there in doing research. It can be very tricky. So
Okay, yeah, it's tricky. I'm going to show you the extraneous variable.
yeah.
And when you see it, I have this joke that the reason I'm going bald is not because I'm aged. It's because I keep going, oh my God, I'm so stupid. So I keep hitting this part of my head and it's made me a terrible joke. But anyway, it's one of these, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Okay, here it is. Um, because people born in these countries are very often born by cesarean section. They use cesarean sections, like over 50% of the population is born by induced methods, typically cesarean section. Babies that are born by cesarean section are born during office hours, between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. And consequently, they're born when the sun is above the horizon. And Mercury and Venus Venus never gets more than 47 or 48 degrees from the sun, and Mercury within 28 degrees. So they're near the sun. So they're all above the horizon because these are countries that use cesarean sections more than other countries. So the extraneous variable could be just by chance. Maybe in Venezuela, they like, chess, and they have a lot of great chess players. Um, I think the Dominican Republic wins a lot of Little League games. They play baseball or somewhere around there. Anyway, it could be a different culture that loves chess. They produce a lot of chess champions. And they also perform a lot of cesarean sections. So people are born with planets above the horizon. Isn't that a weird extraneous variable that you'd never think of? And these are the nasty things. That's why I say research involves creative thinking and people coming from different points of view. Sometimes a person is in the meeting, they're not such great research analysts, but they know a lot of things related to what you're talking about. And they'll think of it. They'll say, "Oh, wait, did you know there's a lot of cesarean sections in those countries?" And you go, "What? There's what?" And then you look at the statistics, and there it is. And it's really major, so it would cause a significant difference. So if you do charts of people born in Brazil, they will have the sun in houses 7 through 12 more than other countries, and Mercury and Venus, regardless of what they do. Interesting, isn't it? I'm just giving you a feeling for how tricky research is, and how many things you could think of and issues that come up. So progress tends to be slow and steady. Now, I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead. Are we good?
Hello? Yes.
Hi.
Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. What about the allotment of space and time for individuals who just drop in at a certain time? Because I see what you're talking about. It's just like it's specific that everybody would born at a certain time because it's induced. But is it because that space and time that those people will definitely do the things that that time is allotted? You understand
Okay,
what
the
I'm
point,
saying?
right. Here's the point I'm making. This is what happens in the research discussions. You discuss why things are happening. But what I want to present here is just some facts about research. The fact is you can have extraneous variables that you're not aware of. What those extraneous variables are doing and how to interpret it, we can discuss that from Kingdom Come, and that's what research is about. But in this introduction, I just want to alert you to issues in research. And when you hear the word extraneous variable, that's what we're talking about. It's a big problem, and maybe it's not a problem. Maybe, and there could be different explanations, but I just want you to know about the issue because this is academic level research, and in future meetings, we're going to be saying something like, well, cesarean sections might be an extraneous variable, and your eyes will go, you'll just go, oh, what are these nerds talking about? It's not really that complicated, and I'm just introducing you to the language. But you're right, there can be multiple ways and different ways of explaining that. but I'm not going there yet. I'm just going over vocabulary and issues. And the exchange variable may not be a problem, but you need to be aware of it because it could be. Okay, another issue is, does your sample adequately represent the population? We talked about this, and it never represents it perfectly. And some of the issues are the people in the control group born in the same years? Are they different ages? Are they born at different times of the day? Are they born in different kind of places? Like if they're born near the equator, like if your experimental group is born mostly in Europe and your control group is in other places closer to the equator, houses have different sizes as you move away from the equator, all kinds of things happen. Aries and Libra rise more often when you're away from the equator. Or less often. Did you know that? Pisces, Aries, Virgo, and Libra do not rise very often the farther you get away from the equator. So if you start seeing, oh, gee, Pisces and Aries are not rising for this group, it might be because they're born at high latitudes. Maybe you're doing research for people in Europe. People in Europe rarely have Pisces and Aries rising. Believe it or not, it's an astronomical fact. These are all examples of issues with comparing the population to the sample, or also comparing the sample to the control group. There's something I want you to know about, which is a shuffled control group. The shuffled control group is extremely simple, and it's a blessing for astrology research. It is when I heard about this shuffled control group, I think it was 20 or 30 years ago, I met Mark Urban Lorraine at a conference, and he told me about it, and I was like in ecstasy. It was worth going to conference just to learn about the shuffled control group. And it's the simplest, stupidest idea in the world, but I never thought of it. A shuffled control group is when you have a group of charts, say you have Alice, Bill, and Charles, and you mix up their date, times, and places. Oh, I forgot to put the time in here. But you would mix up the dates and times. You would take January and give that to person 2, take the 7th, which is this one, put it here, put 1987, which you randomly mix them together. And now the control group is the same age, same seasons, and same places as the experimental group. But they're different charts. This is one of the best control groups you could ever imagine.
It's not the same season.
Well, it's very, very close because they're born the same month. I've got people born in January,
Oh, I
July,
see,
and
yeah.
August.
Okay,
January,
okay.
July, and August. And
I see.
the dates are going to randomly fluctuate anyway between that. So, yeah, so you can have the same season, the same age, and the same places. So this control group is fabulous. It's so similar to the experimental group. It's fantastic. And if you find a difference between your experimental group and a shuffled control group, you probably really found something. We call the shuffled control group very conservative. It's we like things that are conservative, meaning there's very little risk. So the shuffled control group is more similar to these people than any real group of people. So this is a major breakthrough for certain kinds of research where you need a control group and you're doing birth charts. So I wanted you to know about that because you'll keep hearing about, oh, we used a shuffled control group. You can't use it for all research, like predictive, but you can use it for analyzing different groups of birth charts. A few more things I want to mention. I'm at 45 minutes. I want to wrap this up soon, so we have a lot of time to talk. But I want to talk about exploratory research versus confirmatory research. This is huge because when a lot of people think of research, they think of confirmatory research. And let me give you a simple example. Suppose you believe that astrologers, I have a typo here. You believe astrologers have Mercury sextile Uranus or Mercury trine Uranus with a 5-degree orb. If that's what you believe and you test that out, that's called confirmatory research. You have an idea, you have a hypothesis, you test it. Instead of doing confirmatory research, you could look at the distribution of Mercury-Uranus angles in the experimental group compared to the control group and just see where the peaks are. Like what if they don't have sextiles or trines, but they do have them square or something. So you could just explore the data to see what's there. So exploratory research is for finding things. You don't know exactly what to expect. You want to see what's in the data. You want to make discovery. And confirmatory is to confirm something that you already have confidence in. Okay, you got the difference? So a lot of research is exploratory, not confirmatory. And the data that you use in exploratory research is called training data, and the data used for confirmatory research is called test data. So for example, sometimes people will look at a group of charts and they'll say, oh my God, they have the sun in Gemini way more. I've shown that astrology works. Sun is in Gemini with these people. Well, if you're just exploring the data and you didn't start out with a clear hypothesis that they will have sun in Gemini, you haven't found anything with great confidence. All you found is something to confirm with new data. So exploratory research gives very low confidence, but it helps discover things you don't know. And often we do exploratory research first to get some idea of how things work, and then we follow up with confirmatory research. You all got that? Remember that research is about getting more confidence and insights. It's not about proving anything. You might say, well, gee, it's only exploratory. Nobody's going to be impressed by that. Is the goal of research to impress people? No. The goal of the research is to learn how astrology works, at least within the context of Cosmobiology Institute. So whether it impresses people or not is irrelevant. The question is, are we learning something? And we might be finding relationships between planets that we didn't know about. So you can make discovery. Okay, I just yellow highlighted that terminology, training data versus test data. Okay, last few things, I'm almost done. Data visualization is one of the hottest, coolest things in many areas of research. And here's an example of data visualization. This is a graph that I made for mental instability for Marilyn Monroe. So I made predictions of transits that would make Marilyn Monroe more unstable. And at the time that she had a drug overdose and died from it, the graph peaked. It was right here as this graph goes to one of its highest peaks this is for the year 1962. And there was her drug overdose. So the graph shows, that looks pretty good. Is it super impressive? No, there are other peaks, but at least it landed on a peak. So this is an example of data visualization. You can visualize what's going on. Results don't have to be statistical. And graphs are the coolest thing in data discovery, knowledge discovery. Here's another graph for Judy Garland. She also died from a drug overdose. Judy Garland and Marilyn Monroe were contemporaries. They had met a few times. They were both singers, they were both actresses. Of course, very different people, but some similarities. I made a mental instability formula for Judy Garland, and I made a long-term trend. This is for the month of June. What year is it for? 1969. So this is the month of June. I just ran it for 1 month, and it was peaking in that month around the 22nd of June. And then I add in fast transits that create little fluctuations. So the slow transits create the general tendency. And look when she died at 8 a.m. on June 22nd, the local time, wherever that was, I don't remember. And the highest peak was right at the moment she died from a drug overdose. So this says, gee, this formula might work. Gives us a little bit of confidence. Let's try it with other people. Let's explore it. It looks promising. So anything that gives us some confidence that it's produced directly out of a formula, that formula could possibly work. So I wanted to show you data visualization. It's important. Last thing I want to mention again is that research is a practical undertaking. It's not an idealistic thing. You don't get perfect control groups. You have limited amount of time, data, software, other resources. So a lot of what we decide to do is based on the practical limitations. And remember, a modest improvement in understanding is better than no improvement. Because when you're in here and you say, well, gee, I got a full-time job and I can't get a perfect thing. You can do some kind of reasonably well-organized research. It could give a little more confidence about something, or insight of some kind. Document your research so others can replicate it, and so they can replicate and build upon it. Make the data available with a download, if at all possible. Sometimes there's confidentiality problems, but otherwise making it available. Other thing I want to recommend is do research on something that you love, because your passion for what you're interested in will inspire you to continue the research, and it will increase your intuition and sensitivity for what to look for. Get feedback from peers if possible. Publish in some way to benefit the field. If you do some good research, it's good to let everyone know about it. It's one of the things we're doing. Again, if you want to get more information on how to do research, I recommend going to cosmobiology.org and reading the research guidelines. We put a lot of work into that to make this very solid, complete thing. What I'm doing here is introducing terminology, concepts, what this is all about, what we're doing. But there are more details there. Also, I've made dozens of tutorial videos on research. There's also a research journal called Correlation, comes out of England, and their website is correlationjournal.com. I'm sure there's lots of other resources I'm not thinking of. Okay, I finished talking a mile a minute. I finished in less than an hour. Did you all follow that? Was I talking too fast? I think a lot of it was probably you're familiar with already. I just wanted to put us all on the same starting point. Peter.
Can I ask a question and make a comment?
Yes.
Peter Neumann in California. Sorry I'm late getting in. I had a medical emergency I had to take care of. I'm wondering, when I read your book on bipolar stuff, I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated by what I thought was the need for evidence-based research. And I wonder, to what extent do you think that book actually demonstrated that? That was before we formed Cosmobiology, and which is now based on the notion of evidence-based research. But to what extent did that book really have that at its heart?
Yeah, that's a great question. It does, in my estimation, my evaluation of research, it definitely gives us, it's hard to put a number on it, but it gives us confidence that the formula actually works. Now, I just made, in the past month or so, I took the essential things in the book and I made a series of, 9 videos, I think, on the research. And I redid the final stage of the research, the hypothesis test, with improved and more data. And the additional research I did confirms what was found. So we're consistently finding, as we look at new data, that it confirms the findings. So because we did a hypothesis test at the end, the 4th stage of the research, which means we took new data, we had a strict hypothesis. The hypothesis was confirmed, and now in the past month, I've done some more with some additional data, also confirming it. It's a strong step that suggests there's something there. It just needs more research.
Okay, let's start.
It's a start. It's a big It's like put the shovel in the ground and we got something solid. Now, research is all about confidence levels. Maybe our confidence level is 30 or 40%. It might be that I did not find anything. We don't know. We need to keep doing it over and over and over again. But does it strongly suggest that those variables are associated with bipolar disorder? Yes, it does. It does definitely strongly suggest, which is amazing. I mean, we just need to do more research and confirm it.
Has anyone else tried to duplicate some of your research using other techniques?
No.
Anecdotally, just I have with 2 people, but that's just 2 people. So, and
Yeah,
I was astounded too. And I already was into research, but that was part of what sparked me to lean more into research, because I'm fascinated with it. And I know there's more to it that we need to keep discovering.
Yeah, Giselle Terry, who started the bipolar disorder research, she's a very, very busy marriage and family therapist, and she continues to use the ideas with her clients, and other people are using the ideas. So the application seems to work. I'll tell you one funny anecdotal. These are just anecdotal stories that seem to support it, but this married couple came to visit me one day, and they said that their son has severe bipolar disorder, and they've sent him to all these retreats. They're fairly wealthy, and they spent many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because of the story, I looked at his chart, and I said, well, he has the Jupiter 13 vibe bipolar disorder, which is a problem with sense of grandiosity and inferiority. It's not the most common from what I can tell. I said, just according to my model. I don't know if my model is right. And basically, they both started crying right on the spot. And they said, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get help for our son, and you've given us more relevant information in a few minutes than they ever gave us. So it's an anecdotal story. We don't put a lot of emphasis on it, but people are applying the ideas because it became clear to them that that's exactly what's a dynamic. And they weren't sure if it was directly related to bipolar disorder, but it was something very strong for him. Anyway, yeah, so there are applications, but doesn't increase our confidence very much.
Okay, so do we have questions from people who are not
Yeah.
part of this organization?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. Is there some entry-level statistical program we could look at? For doing charts, and you mentioned it.
Well, the principles, the document on what this all entails is worth looking at.
Yeah, so I'm at cosmobiology.org, and you click on the research, and you could start with the condensed version. That'll give you the most essential parts. Reading this entire document will help you get into more of the details of research and some of the important concepts. Or you could read the entire long version. It'll give you more information. The other thing is, I've made dozens of YouTube videos on research. They're a little hard to find, but it's another source, and I give a lot of introductory videos. So I don't like to talk about myself too much, but let me just mention, if you go to YouTube and you were to type, I call my thing Cosmic Cybernetics. Usually has my birth name. I've changed my name, but a lot of things are under my birth name. Cosmic Cybernetics, and then I'll put research methods. I can put astrology. If you search something for something like this in YouTube, you'll see these videos, how to conduct astrology research. I have here's one where I have 25 tutorial videos that take you from the ground up on how to do astrology research. So these are freely available to everyone. And then other things. So I have some stuff. Does anybody know anybody else know any other resources for And of course, we have our presentations by Cosmobiology Institute and our future meetings each month. You don't have to be a research expert or really know anything about research. If you want to do research, come to the monthly meeting. Sometimes the beginners ask the best questions, by the way. I mean, because, they just do. So, yeah, so these meetings, monthly meetings, and the research guidelines on the website, my tutorial videos. Does anybody else know any other good resources for learning astrology research? If you do, take the microphone and put it in the chat. I'm going to open up the chat and see if anybody's typing something.
I've
I
got a
don't-
video on the basics of extreme case sampling that we videoed we recorded it when I was explaining it to some people in my research group. And so we've got that video on some basics of extreme case sampling.
Is that video available on YouTube for people?
It's not at present. We could talk about how to make it available.
Okay, yeah.
I've 60
Can I say something?
I've got about 60 years of experience in evidence-based research in computer science. So I don't think that's what you want to look at, but it's there.
Yeah, we have a lot of people with a lot of different background. I'm reading the comments here. We have somebody here who's a data scientist and lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, wants to get involved. So we have a lot of talented people coming in, and everybody brings some different insights, which is just, that's where the magic happens when you get people together. Yeah.
Can I
Especially,
say something?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't we do an exercise where we get everybody does come and grind just a particular subject matter, and we just something simple, and we just come out, because most people learn by doing, and
Right.
and if we get people that are already doing something, we can get things out in the open, and we won't be just speaking out of air. We will be doing something that is
Yep.
related to the topic, and then we grind everybody's information together, and then
Perfect.
everybody won't be like,
Yeah.
everybody won't be, wow, what he's talking about. I
Right.
mean, you're doing
Perfect.
it, and then
Perfect.
everybody can able to say, well, if you do that, this is what I did, and Mary say, oh, I did that, but I didn't come to that point, but I like what you
Right.
say, and everybody kind of being in the same language.
Right. I agree 100%, and that's exactly where we're headed. I just wanted to lay out some basic information, but what I want to do, what we want to do in this meeting, instead of me presenting the example and walking you through it, we want to take in from you guys what kind of research interests you the most, like certain kind of natal chart or forecasting. We'll take something that one or more of you is interested in, and we'll show how it can be researched. And those of us who have, especially those of us, but all of us who have some experience, like we have at least one other data scientist here, et cetera. Peter's 60 years experience in evidence-based work in another field. That's, we all give input on ideas of how to research and what kind of research designs, what kind of issues. But that's exactly where we're headed. I just want to, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We don't have a lot of time tonight. We only have 25 more minutes, but in our next meeting, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at research projects. So let's see what you guys are interested in terms of research, and we'll use your ideas that you're interested in and show how to do the research. I love it. That's exactly where we're headed.
Santino,
Yeah.
did I had to leave for a couple minutes while you were talking, so I didn't see it in the part I was at. Did you discuss how extreme case sampling fits into this picture?
No, I didn't talk specifically about extreme case sampling yet. Extreme case sampling is one of the exploratory methods we use to help build a model. a thing that I'm very strong about, every researcher has their own twist and their own preferences. There's not just like one way is the only way. And one of the things that I believe, that just the way I do things, is I believe in exploratory research. I don't want to go in and assume that some given ideas in astrology work. I want to have the data talk to me, because my experience is that our beliefs about astrology are probably not very accurate. I know that's kind of cynical or something, but I'm more interested in having the data talk to me and tell me what consistent themes there are. So I have some general expectations. So what, but I'm not very specific. So what the extreme case sampling research does is it helps us find potential things that would be confirmed in future research. It's used in genetics research. They've made tremendous discoveries of genetic markers for obesity, genetic markers for schizophrenia using extreme case sampling. You can get really important information. Extreme case sampling just means you go through a database and you look at only the top 3, 5, or 10 people. So if you want to know what, like I was recently interested in finding out what sun opposition moon means. So you go into software that has tens of thousands of charts, and what I did is I gave it more points the more exact it is. And so the top 2 people were born with sun opposition moon with no orb. Like the degrees and minutes are exactly the same. Now that extreme sun-moon opposition is what we call an information-rich example. If the people with that do not fit our theory is probably wrong. I have several videos that explain this, and there are certain assumptions. I don't want to get too technical in this first video, but I'll just say one more thing. In a lot of astrology, we assume that the more you have of something, the stronger it is, right? Like if you have 5 planets in Leo, that's stronger than 1 planet in Leo. And we often do this with aspects, like if the orb is smaller, it's stronger. So when you have a set of variables that as they get stronger, the trait gets stronger, this is not always true. For example, with income, as income goes up, stress goes down in some research. But when income goes very high, stress goes up, because a lot of those high income people are doctors and other like lawyers, and it's a very high stress job. So there's not like a monochromatic, like constantly going up. But in astrology, if you assume that the more of something in the astrology, the stronger the trait is, then you can use extreme case sampling, because that means the people with sun opposition moon with the smallest orb, they must exhibit some of the traits that you expect. And if they don't, your theory is probably wrong. So it's an exploratory research method that is used in genetics. And I've had correspondence with the authors of that genetics research, and they were very enthusiastic and supportive, saying that in my application, it should also work. So that's, again, going to other experts to get feedback. It's only
Dave,
one research design. There's many, 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 many research designs. Yeah.
I got puzzled the other day when I put in front of you a question, and you were given an example. You went through the series software, but you were plugging in a number of planets into what I was talking about, and I question that, because plugging in, and you just kind of tip on some of what I was saying earlier, what he was talking about, is that if you put so many planets, it's not going to necessarily give you the answer, because the planets have expressions, and and also time of orbit. If the wider the orbit, you're going to end up having more distortion. The
Okay,
faster the orbit.
let me interrupt. because you're making a very, very good point, and I want to drive this point home to everyone, which is what Desdale is talking about right now. We often call content expertise. So to do good research, you need content expertise, astrologers who think they know how things work. You don't have non-astrologers make discoveries in astrology. You don't have non-chemists make discovery in chemistry. Content expertise is extremely important. So what he's talking about is based on his work in astrology. He's saying based on his understanding of how things work, the design that I was suggesting doesn't reflect very well his understanding of how it should work. So it's up to you, the researcher, to create a design that fits what you think. So I'm not Desdale, so I started coming up with ideas that are not going to be exactly what he wants or what any of you want. So you come up with the design for what you think it works, and then a research methodologist or data scientist can look at it and talk about the technical issues involved. But I am not going to be able to come up with a design that's right for any of you, because you have your ideas and you need to build a design. So what I was showing in that class was just a quick idea of how I would approach it, but it might be totally different from the way any of you would approach it.
But David, as you taking that point you just mentioned, if everyone come up with their own ideas, I should be able to put that outcome to a test and maybe get the same results.
Same
Exactly.
results as other
Yeah.
people get using a different.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the sun opposite the moon. And if I take that same method that you use, okay,
Mhm.
I should get the similar results if I just take those two methods, the sun and the moon.
Right. Right. What
Right.
Desdale is talking about is that he might want to use a different research design. Instead, I started throwing a bunch of planets in something. He may
Right.
not want to throw all those planets in there. And because it's his idea
Right.
and he knows what he's looking for, he should come up with the idea for how he wants to design it. That's all. Don't let some other
okay.
person
Oh, the
tell
design.
you.
Okay.
Don't
Yeah.
let some research expert tell you what you should be looking for. You're the content expert.
Oh, okay.
You know
Yeah.
how you think, you know what you're looking for, and you have questions you want to answer. So now if the research methodologist says we can't answer that question because of these technical problems, and you can say, oh, darn it, we can't do it because there's technical problems to doing it. But it's always important that the researcher is passionate and is directing what's happening, because it's your question. A lot of discovery happens through passion and dedication. It's not like you just stick this stuff into a machine and the machine does it for you. There's a lot of intuition, a lot of sensitivity, a lot goes into it, and the researcher needs to lead the process and listen to the research experts who will tell you what the technical issues are related to it.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we have some questions in the chat. Yeah. Did Gauquin have improved values when he emitted cesarean sections? I don't know. Did he? I don't know if anybody knows about the Gauquin research. I'm not sure if he did that or not. But maybe some of you do. Okay, I'm just going through all these questions, see if we can. Okay. Okay. What kinds of research are you guys interested in? What kinds of questions you have? And if you put something in the chat and I didn't notice it, you can put it in the chat again. I'm at the bottom here. We've got 15 more minutes.
So I was the person asking about Gauquelin, and as I remember, he improved his p-values by omitting cesareans, which is of course a different issue entirely from your example of cesareans. But as we all we don't know the mechanism behind how the planets work, whatever it might be, quantum physics or magnetic fields or whatever. But this is one of the issues that I consider a lot. How much can we profit by omitting certain data from the beginning? I know, for example, that you emit whole hour and half hour births because that is a sign that there's an imprecision there. And Gauquelin, he omitted cesareans. And I know that this is one of the areas where research can get very poor, because I've encountered people that say that they've researched thousands of charts, but then you speak to them and then they say, and what they've done is they say that, well, I figured out that people aren't born when they're supposed to be born. So,
Yes.
The most horrible,
they've changed the times, to work better with their hypothesis.
the most horrible example of that I know is what has happened with the CDC and the vaccines. Robert Redfield, who was the head of the CDC, has admitted that they were shredding all of the evidence that the vaccines did not work, and it didn't fit their model. And there's an example of where if you don't use the right model and the right data, you are completely faking everything you're doing. Well, that's exactly what the CDC did. And not only were they hiding the evidence that there were massive cases of vaccines that didn't work, they had evidence that some of the drugs that they were using did work, but they wanted to suppress that information because they wanted to promote the vaccines. Now, there's an example where if you hide chatbots today in AI, or an example of that, depending on how you train the data, you get radically different results. So I just wanted to throw that one out there as a horrible example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds
There's
like garbage in, garbage out,
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And,
Exactly.
as astrologers, I mean, I encountered many people give me, but that is fake, right?
Yeah.
Or some of the people in India, they didn't know what time they were born. And there's astrologer through Cosmobiology, my certification, that using the declination chart and horary chart, you see, as astrologer, we have to have a tool to encounter this. Are you getting genuine data or not?
Yep.
And many times I use that and then that do my findings are genuine, and the outcome is great.
I want to make a summary point on what Peter said. There's a couple of major points, but I just want to underscore one point, which is that being ethical, there's no way to prevent lack of ethics. So underlying all of this evidence-based stuff is integrity and ethics. And people distort their data. There's been cases of academic papers that they're basically lies, and Peter's sharing what the CDC did. CDC has a very high reputation, and now they've been found to be violating that. So there's no, we have to kind of keep checking on each other, making sure we're being honest. Are we hiding data? It's a constant temptation to cheat. and there's no way around it. One of the things that's interesting about an evidence-based practice is it's not a linear, simple, mechanical thing that just plug it in, it solves all your problems. It depends on you and your integrity and your honesty. So we never, ever get away from that. And people, there's been professors who were fired, et cetera, for lying on their research. And yeah, so I just wanted to make that point.
I
Yeah.
have a question about data collection. So if you don't have enough people in the database in Sirius, then what is the appropriate way to go about collecting data so that you're not doing the things that you mentioned about convenient sampling and that sort of thing? So you limit the bias as much as possible.
Yeah, so what a lot of people use for data in astrology is the online Astro Databank. It's a very common resource, and it's what I used for the update that I mentioned in my bipolar disorder research that I did in the past month. And you can go to astrodatabank.com is one way to get to it. Although when you do it this way, it gives you nasty error messages. And you can get to it through astro.com. And oh no, it let me in this time. And you can search, I forget where it is, somewhere in here, research tool. You can go into the research tool and you can search for different categories. I forget how to get into it, but somewhere in here, yeah. You can search for different categories. So I often use this because the data in the Sirius software is a little bit old. It's not updated with all of the data that's been added in the last few years. So sometimes if I want to be completely current and have the best database possible, I find the additional ones that have been put online that are not in the Sirius software. So I'll grab them from the Sirius software and then go in here and find the others. But the online Astro Databank, most of that data is in the Sirius software. I don't know if it's in any other software or not, but it's a common source because that data has nothing to do with you, the researcher. So your hands were not involved in collecting the data. The criteria for collecting the data was generally either that the person was famous or they were in some database.
But
and it was not astrologers trying to fit some kind of theory. Let me just mention this, the other source is the Gauquelin data. Most of that is also in the Sirius software, but you can go to, I forget the name of the website. You can just Google Gauquelin astrology data, and you can download that and import that into various programs. So online Astro Databank and the Gauquelin data are the two main sources of data people use, because if you collect your own data, you've just given yourself, you've multiplied your work times 50 or something. You know what I
right.
mean?
But isn't that what people do when they do research, like scientists? They don't necessarily have a database, like this to look through. Isn't that what they would do by collecting data on their own? I know I'm trying to think of ways to remove the bias, obviously, but, isn't it possible to collect data on your own if people wanted to participate? That wasn't like attached to you, if that makes sense.
Some academic research involves gathering new data and some does not. A lot of it uses existing databases.
That's the most ideal, right? Yeah.
It's fine to use an existing database. It depends on what your question is.
Right.
If you have a question, very often we use a lot of research is a variation on existing research using the same data. Like a lot of research will say, okay, well, Santino did this bipolar disorder with all this vibrational blah, blah. Well, I think Vedic works much better. So you might use my same data and use Vedic ideas or evolutionary astrology. So a lot of research, the majority of research in most fields uses existing databases. Collecting data is usually time consuming.
Right.
And what you have to think about with research is it's practical. I said this before. It's not ideal, it's practical. If you're going to spend 100 hours collecting data and it only takes 20 hours to do the research, you could have done 5 research projects with the time it took you to collect data for one research project. You just have to think, what is giving me the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak? It's
Yeah.
all practical on what's available to you. And since we don't have, we're not part of a research institute, and we don't have a bunch of graduate students trying to get their PhD and doing a lot of tedious research, we have to do it on our own. Most astrologers are avoiding the time-consuming things because it's just not worth it. So it's
trust
just
you.
up to you. You know, it's up to you based on your priorities and what you think will give you the best information.
That's understandable.
I said, trust what you get and verify it after, you know. You have a chart and then verify it. I mean, there's certain times on my chart, I know if I'm getting something, it's not really good stuff, so I ignore it. But if I do get something, I verify by transit and progression and all that stuff. I mean, everyone have their own way, but trust and verify after.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the idea in modern research methods is to build a clear model and then see if that model works with the database. So it's very different from what astrologers do, because generally what we're doing as astrologers is we're working on one chart at a time, applying our ideas, seeing how it works. Now, that gives you the content expertise. In modern research methods, we take everything that you've figured out about transits, progressions, whatever, and see if it will work with a database. Like, is there some, does your research, your understanding of astrology suggest that a certain kind of people or a certain event will be related to certain transits? Like, I've done research on accidents, and there was no connection between Mars and Uranus by aspect. When I did exploratory research, I did the graphs, and I could not see anything. Now, someone else might be able to go in, look at those graphs and see a pattern that I missed.
Mhm.
But I did find indicators of accidents, but they were not the ones astrologers talked about. So basically, you take your ideas and see if it'll work with a database that is not heavily biased by you selecting the people in the database.
Right.
Why don't we do this? Since it's always going to be a problem taken from some source, but like among us, say we have an idea about a particular research. Why don't we rotate an information from each one of us? Like we grab from our own experience person and say, well, let us throw this in the bag and say, let us examine it from each of us and see if this works. Say, well, if we identifying that if Sun in Leo is Leo and they're all bombastic and drama filled, let us drag from each one of us an item from one of our people that we know or whatever, and say, hey, let me just give Santino this and see if this works. And we pull it together and say, well, hey, let's just work this way out. And so you eliminate some of that thing. And so we say, well, we got this from this person, we got this from it, and we say, well, we're gonna make it work.
Okay, our time is basically up. So let's take what Desdale's suggesting and build on that. I just put in the chat my email address. It's santino@astrologydc.com. You can go into the chat. You'll see it there. And you can email me, just email me and say, I was at the first Cosmobiology Institute Research Meeting, and these are the questions, or this is the kind of research I'm interested in. And at our next meeting next month on the 4th Tuesday in November, let's see when that'll be. That'll be November 26th. In December, we're going to move it to the 3rd Tuesday because the 4th Tuesday is Christmas Eve. But so when we meet on November 26th, I will share with you the things that you guys want to explore with research and what topics you want to explore. And we'll start into doing some research, developing research models and how we would do it. And one more thing, let me read to you one suggestion, and a couple of people like this. Here's what Janice wrote, and somebody else said they like this. Let me just read you. Oh, I'm going to copy and paste it. That's what I'll do. Can I copy this? Control C, and let me just pull up something and paste it here. Okay. Here's one example. Our time is up, but I'll talk about this a little bit.
Make it bigger. Oh, yeah.
Interested in finding karmic or cell memory and genetics resulting in trauma, and what the markers or issues involved, and how to direct the healing process. What planets, asteroids, etc., and placements and aspects might be noted. Now, let me just give you some indications, because our time is pretty much up. What you need to do is translate your question into measurable things. Got it? Translate your question into measurable things. So, interest in finding karmic or cell memory and genetics resulting in trauma. Okay, so trauma. So what we could do is you could go into AstroDataBank, see if there's a category of trauma, use any kind of thing related to trauma. You have to think clearly about it. Are you expecting trauma of an alcoholic father, and that results in somebody having anger issues? Is that going to be different from trauma of a mother who's a drug addict and the person's born with drugs in their bloodstream? Like, do you want to categorize all trauma together? Do you think that these different kinds of trauma will be really different and you need to classify them? These are decisions that you, the researcher, make based on your understanding of what you think works. No research methodologist can tell you about your content expertise and your intuition about it. So what you want to do is you want to think about your question. What does trauma mean? And one of the problems is if you think that these different kinds of trauma are going to have different astrological things associated with them, do we have enough data of different kinds of trauma? So we can go into the AstroDataBank and see if we can find enough cases. And if we can't, then we might be back to what Starlene was talking about. You might have to collect data. And some research we just can't do because we don't have the time to collect it and we don't have a database.
Okay,
So,
Santino, put your email address in the chat, if you will. Somebody's asking for it.
yeah, I put it in the chat already, and let me put it here.
It's not there, David.
Oh, it's
I
not?
don't see. I don't see.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, let me put it here.
Do some research for this.
I had the wrong. I sent. Okay, let me just.
You sent a private message.
I sent a private message by accident. It's exactly right. Okay, there it is. Let me put it in the chat. Why did it select that one person? Group chat. I just thought it would default to group. I didn't even look. Okay, now it's in the chat. Thank you for letting me know. It's in the chat and it's on the screen. Yeah, and I will total up what you guys send me. Like, I'll put Janice in there for researching trauma and planets, asteroids, placements. But again, let me make this point clear. The research methodologist or data scientist doesn't have all the answers. You have the answers about what you think is involved with trauma. Like, do you think house placements might be relevant? Do you think certain kinds of aspects might be relevant? Do you think it's like Chiron or the South Node or Pluto with the moon, or what? We can't look at everything. So what kinds of things do you want to look at? And do different kinds of trauma probably relate to different things? And we have to look at what kind of data is available. Because if there's not enough data on trauma, we can't do anything unless we collect data. So, yeah, I hope that helps, like with a general question, how we proceed with the actual research. And a lot of it is common sense. What are we talking about? What is your intuition about it? And do we have data? I'm in the online Astro Data Bank.
I think we should just start something simple.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
something very simple, and then get everybody oiled to what is going on, whether they're using different apparatus to get it or get their mind tuned to just
Yeah,
collecting and doing this research. Just start something simple. Just
I
very
love it.
simple.
I love
Not
it. I'm gonna,
not getting to because you're going to get, because as you rightly say, Santino, you're asking so many questions about the matter. You just want it to be simple, that everybody just comes in, and when they come in, they can offer their style, their manner in which they get to the result or the answer, and then they can move on to much harder subject matter with that exercise. Because most of us most of us do things or learn by doing, and I can tell you that everybody here learn by doing. So when you get them involved and get all them sweat into it, they will give you more enriched information. You will have more cross information flowing from different people than just one person talking, and and get everybody just oil to the machine, and it will be more enriching as we go along. But we just should just start simple, and then move on outward, because the trauma thing is going to get us into a lot. Knowing from my understanding of things, I know that the trauma is going to get into a lot of levels
yeah,
of
no, I agree.
control.
Yeah, I agree. So let's, you know what, we're over time and I don't want to go too much over. So let's wrap this up. Just email me. You have my email address, and send me topics, anything you want to do. I like Desdale's suggestion. Let's start simple. Trauma is like, oh my God, really complicated. Let's start with some simple things and build up to more complicated ones. And also, I want to mention this. Linda Berry just mentioned, what if we research the 11th house? Now, this brings up an interesting thing. You can research an astrological variable, which is the independent variable. You can research an independent variable. What does the 11th house do? You can research a dependent variable. What do people who experience trauma have, or people with bipolar disorder, chess players, or anything else? So there's two different kinds of research: the independent variable and the dependent variable, and they're both interesting, aren't they? And they tell, so you can think about that, what kinds of things we want to do. And we can answer questions. I've done research on zodiac signs, and it's given us more confidence about what zodiac signs mean than a lot of the traditional ideas. The problem is astrologers aren't interested in modern research methods, so they haven't looked at it. But we can answer questions like, what does the 11th house do? We can't answer, but we can get better confidence than we have currently. So we can really answer actual questions, gain greater confidence. Okay, any last minute comments? We're 9 minutes over, which is good. I like going a little bit over, but not too much, because I know some of you need to get up in the morning or go to sleep or whatever time zone you're in.
Could you just leave us a simple task, and that when we come back we can just get into it? Just a simple thing.
A simple
And then,
thing.
yeah, like let me you remember that thing that you were talking about? Just keep it really fine tuned.
Okay, here's a simple thing that
Yes.
you guys can think about for the month and play around with. How would you find out what Aries means? We can find out. We can get more confidence about what Aries means than all the books put together according to modern research methods. So that's a simple example. Another simple example is, what happens when a person's in an accident? So those are two things you could think about. One is an independent variable. What does Aries mean? The other is a dependent variable. How would we figure out what's happening when there's an accident? That'll give you something to think about, and we can discuss it next month.
I don't like
Aries would be the one.
I don't like what does Aries mean, because it's in a question of in what context. And that's a very vague question. I
Yeah,
mean, it's different in Vedic, it's different in Egyptian, it's different in Chinese.
hmm
For all I know, there's Italian astrology there somewhere. But I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
I just think that what Santino is saying would just keep it simple, asking the question what Aries mean, and then everybody that's coming in with whatever they comes up with, and just kind of grind it together. That's how I kind of
Yeah,
see
we
it.
can
So
see
we're
the,
going to have all that. It's going to be ratified when we come together and
right.
exchange.
Yeah,
So
and
it is a wide question, but it's as long as we do it and come together, it's going to be great.
yeah, and we'll see the trade-offs with different questions. The Aries question is much more difficult in some ways than the accident thing, but the accident thing has additional problems too. Anyway, well, we can talk about it. Okay, guys, we're good. I think we got a lot done. I laid out the basic platform. We want to do academic level research, the real deal, not just fiddling around. And we have some experts here that can all contribute to help guide us in the right direction. Okay, I will see you next month. Go ahead and email me any thoughts about what you want to do in the future. This is for us. It's for all of you. Let's do it. Let me know. I'm just, the master of ceremonies here. So you guys tell me what to do and we'll do it. Okay, I will see you next month. Go Cosmobiology Institute. Yay. One more program that we have.
And don't forget to say,
Nonprofit institute.
you.
Make this happen.
don't
Great
forget,
work, David. Thank you very much for your
You're welcome.
presentation.
don't
You're welcome.
forget to save the recording.
Yes, I will save the recording. Thank you.
We're up on the website,
Yep, we'll upload it. I will upload it.
including the chats.
And I'll upload the chat and the notes and the PowerPoint. Will all be
Yeah.
uploaded.
Good.
Oh,
Great.
okay, guys, thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited. Like, wow, we had about 30 people here. It's really wonderful. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next month.
Take
All
care.
right, thank you.
Bye. Bye,
night.
Victoria, Richard,
Bye. Thanks so much.
Jennifer. Take care. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.